Welcome to the Worth Knowing live stream on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube. Also on my Substack, Worth Knowing with Matt Robeson. I'm Matt Robeson. We're on Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn. We're popping up at the last minute in so many hidden places that Senate Republicans thought this show was a bill they needed to pass by July 4th. And that's our theme today. As the dust has started to settle on the Trump budget giveaway disaster, I'm not going to use his stupid name for it because it's stupid. And because it tricks some people into thinking there's something good about it. As the dust has started to settle, tax experts and policy wonks, and we need these people, even if they're a little nerdy, are finally beginning to really dig in to uncover all of the sweetheart deals, the last minute giveaways, the dead of night kickbacks, and outright piracy that was stuffed into the belly of this monster by the US Senate in the last week. All of the hidden stuff that Republicans were hoping and praying people wouldn't find out about until it was too late, because it's so gobsmackingly obnoxious. And it all amounts to an insult on top of an awful lot of injury. And it's also very telling. It says a lot about just how bad this bill is and how bad Republicans knew it was that they had to do all this. If you see an ad for a new car and the car is awesome, all the ad says is, hey, this car is freaking awesome. But if you see an ad for a car where they're offering you all kinds of cheap perks and throw-ins and cash to get you in the door, it's a lemon. And that's exactly what happened here. That's what we want to focus on today. Now, look, little caveat up front here. I spent about a decade as a congressional staffer, first for the House Appropriations Committee and then for 3 Democratic members of Congress. By the way, today's guest, who I'm going to bring on in just a minute, who's waiting patiently backstage, he spent even longer on Capitol Hill and knows more than I do. So look, I know that making little side deals to swing votes is just part of the process. I'm actually one of the few people who thinks it can be kind of a good part of the process in certain circumstances. You know, I mentioned my first job in Congress was for the House Appropriations Committee. That's the committee that gives out the money. I was a summer fellow while I was in grad school, and part of my job was helping them figure out all the earmarks that were going into appropriations bills. And I got to tell you, these were mostly good things. Now, obviously, over the years, there have been some famous examples of a horrible pork, like the Alaska Bridge to Nowhere or the Lawrence Welk Museum parking lot. That was a real thing. People got into trouble for that. But I can tell you that most of these were pretty good projects, job training centers, bridges to somewhere, road repairs, veterans programs. Let me give you one quick example of what I mean. After I finished graduate school, I came back to work in Congress. And by 2002, I was working for a newly elected member of Congress, a guy named Mike Michaud from Maine. He had been a mill worker for 28 years at the Great Northern Paper Company. The day after he was elected, his paper mill got shut down. He hadn't even taken office yet, but I got a call from my old colleagues on the House Appropriations Committee, and they said, look, we've got the end of the year spending bill coming out. And even though your boss hasn't taken office yet, we want to put something in there that he can direct, i.e. an earmark, because he's in a swing district. It's never too soon to start helping some vulnerable Democrats. So I called up my boss. I called Mike and I said, what do you want to do with this? And he said, he wants to find a way to give health care coverage to the 1,200 laid off mill workers in Millinocket and East Millinocket, Maine. We did a little work. We set it up. And that's exactly what we did. Cost less than $1 million. And in a time before the Affordable Care Act, when these folks would have otherwise joined the ranks of the 50 million uninsured Americans in this country, we were able to give them and their families a bridge of healthcare coverage. My point is, if you have responsible adults who take their jobs seriously in Congress, and you say, let's not just let the federal agencies decide how all of our tax dollars are going to get spent. Let's set aside a small amount for our elected representatives to determine on their own, because maybe they know what their districts need, these small items that are inside giant bills. They can be not just reasonable, but actually good. And they're always tough bills to pass in Congress. The ability to make some deals, give some favors, help members of your caucus out, that can all be a positive feature. Wow, that was a long caveat. But none of that is what happened in this Republican budget disaster. As I said at the top, this bill added insult to injury. Now let's talk about the injury. Let's talk about the main part of this for just a minute here before we get to the insult. The injury was taking away food and medicine from more than 10 million Americans in order to give massive tax breaks to the wealthy. I want to show you one quick chart from the New York Times, which is kind of elegant in its simplicity. What this shows is that if you're in the bottom 20% of American households in terms of income, this bill is going to make you lose 2.3% of that income. If you're in the top 20% of American households by income, this bill is going to make you gain 2.3% of income. Really doesn't get any clearer than that. 2.3% lost from the bottom goes to the top. It's an almost direct transfer of income. And it gets there by taking away SNAP and Medicaid. That's food and medicine. That's the injury. That's the obnoxiousness of what's happening here. And just as a quick bonus part of that injury, I want to point out what I wrote in a guest post on the Blue Amp Substack on Saturday. I hope you'll all check that out. And please subscribe to Cliff's Substack and mine, which is worthknowing.substack.com. The other thing that this bill does is it massively increases the debt. And if you remember one thing from today, besides what our guest is about to say, I hope you'll remember this. Increasing the debt hurts the working and middle class the most. Let me repeat that. Increasing the debt hurts the working and middle class the most. Why? Let me show you one more chart. This is also from the New York Times, although ultimately it's sourced from Donald Trump's own White House. Now, these are the biggest pieces of the budget, and they're shown as a percent of GDP. The purple line is Social Security. The blue line is Medicaid and Medicare. The greenish line is defense. I want to look at the orange line for a second. That's what's called non-defense discretionary. Now, after you account for Medicare and Social Security, the major entitlements, which you have to spend on by law, plus Medicaid, which is also an entitlement program, but as we've just seen, it can be a little bit more easily manipulated. And once you've accounted for defense, everything that's left over is non-defense discretionary. That's education, roads and bridges, veterans, job training, FEMA, science, Homeland Security. That's all in that orange line. And now look at the red line. That's the amount of interest that we have to pay on the national debt. And you can see that when I was working in Congress, and even during most of the time that today's guest was working in Congress, the amount of interest on the national debt that we were paying each year was actually relatively low. It was about 1 to 1.5% of GDP. And now it's skyrocketing. In fact, it's just grown bigger than our defense budget. And if you look closely, it's getting awfully close to our entire non-defense discretionary budget. My argument in my Substack article that I wrote on Cliff's Substack on Blue Amp was that for the right wing, this is a feature, not a bug. This is what they want. For all their hemming and caterwauling about the debt, secretly, the Project 2025 types actually love this amount of debt because they know that when you have to put so much of your annual federal budget just to paying interest on the national debt, what gets squeezed out isn't going to be Social Security or Medicare, and it's not defense. It's non-defense discretionary. It's all the things that regular people rely on. It's the things that Democrats really care about and focus most of our attention on. The things that make the Affordable Care Act work. The things that create economic growth and help people through rough patches, give veterans benefits that they've earned. And all of that is part of the injury of this bill as well. And it's a hurt that is going to keep on coming for the middle class and working people for years to come. But today, while we certainly can and will talk about the injury, I want to talk more about the insult. I want to talk about all of the, I've used the word obnoxious a lot. I can't help it. The obnoxious things the Republicans had to do in order to sell this lemon, in order to make this disaster squeeze through, all of the hidden stuff that they're still praying the public won't learn about until it's too late, although you're here, and so you will. Maybe you've heard about it already. To do this, I'm really happy to welcome back an old friend, an outstanding multi-time guest on my Beyond Politics podcast, a man who had a complicated title in the U.S. Senate, but basically, in my mind, the way I describe it is he functioned as the right-hand man for policy for Senator Chuck Schumer back in the 2010s, an insider who the insiders rely on, Mr. Ryan McConney. Ryan, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Great to be here as always. I think the phrase is sometimes under better circumstances. I feel like when we meet, it's usually because something is really not great. But it's great to share and commiserate that with you.
Yeah, boy, we really do. We need to get together when it's like, hey, look, we won a historic victory of some kind.
Yeah.
I hope we don't have to wait a long time for that. All right. As people are saying in the chat, as Joan said, let's go. And I want to continue to encourage our active chatters, our awesome chatters. Please keep at it. I'm going to keep scanning through. And what we're going to do today is we really are going to go through some of the worst hidden stuff. We'll focus mostly on the insult stuff. These things tucked into the bill. But I also want to talk about the injury, and I want to encourage all of you who are watching, put in your comments, give us your thoughts, give us the things that you've seen in the media accounts or that you've found in your own research. Give us what's on your mind, and you have a real live policy expert who knows all the ins and outs here, so we can hit him with a million questions. Before we get into all of that, let me ask you this. Let's start with the big picture. Polls show that this bill, and I'm going to use a technical term for it here, is a monumental political turd. I want to get technical on people here, but I'm going to show here. This is using the acronym that Trump prefers. Net support from recent polls. This is courtesy of our friend Michael Baharahin, a recent guest on this live stream. And you can see Pew, Kaiser Family Foundation, WAPO, Fox News, and Quinnipiac. I mean, deeply underwater among all voters, staggeringly underwater among independents, which you certainly have to worry about as your gettable voters if you are Republicans. Now, Ryan, this is a little bit unlike you and I lived together when we were on the Hill through the ACA experience, which pulled underwater initially. But, there was a feeling that this was a program that once people got used to it and we got past like the scare rhetoric, people were going to like. And that's exactly what history has shown has happened. That's exactly what happened. There's no prospect of that here. This seems like it's just going to get worse. Now, you heard my theory that maybe some of the motivation here is, driving up interest on the debt is part of the point here. But I got to ask you politically, why do this? You work with some Republicans. You've got Republican friends who are in Washington who are like closely hooked in. Like, once you get a few shots into those people, like, what do they say? Like, why are they doing this?
It's a great question, Matt. And I think I would remind people though that yes, the ACA, although it's under threat now in large part because of this bill, was eventually durable and popular. But we did take it on the chin in a couple cycles until that happened. And I remember in the building us telling ourselves like, yeah, look, this will sink it, but we had to pay for that.
My boss lost for one example. So that kind of killed my congressional career.
Several Republicans are kind of telling themselves that their version of that now to kind of soothe out their feelings. But look, I think two things. This is for all the talk about a coalition realignment. This is an old school Republican bill. This is locking in really low tax rates for really rich people. And sort of it certainly represents a more, old school trickle down vision of the economy. And, you had Senate Republicans in particular wanting to say, we don't want these to sunset. We want these things to be permanent. So I think that's the big carrot is they get a lot of tax policy that they wrote in 2017 is now permanent for businesses. Now we'll loop back to who it's permanent for and who it's not. The other part of it is, and this is different than I think anything you or I have ever seen. I've never seen an administration be able to drive Congress in this way. I've never seen a president be able to, Biden and Obama could not push Democratic majorities in Congress the way that Trump has pushed and bent Republican majorities to his will. So a good part of this is, the president said he wanted a bill. There are a few key things in it on the tax side, but the most important thing was, and he worked to get the campaign promises in there on tax on tips and tax on Social Security. So he ran on some things. He got them in the bill, and he said, "Give me a bill, and do whatever else you have to do to get it." And so that there was a bill because Trump said, "Give me a bill." That's
That's yes. Boy, that really does boil it down. I guess the logic is not the point. The politics is not the point. In a way, making his own Republican House and Senate members walk the plank is almost, I think he gets off on that. I really do. I'm not here for the psychoanalysis. I'm here for the policy analysis, but there does seem to be something of a dominance display, power play going on in all of that. All right. I was going to hit you with, I was going to let us do a little bit of debating on the value of special breaks and earmarks and that kind of thing in general. But, one of our commenters here, Monica Meadows, just gave such a perfect segue to what we were going to start to talk about that I want to jump on it. Let me just read this out for anyone who's listening later via audio pod only, which is an option, by the way. If you find yourself catching these, but you're like, gosh, I really want to take this on the go and I don't want to do video, I post all of these live streams in the Beyond Politics podcast with a slightly edited down version. So feel free to catch it there and subscribe to my pod. All right. Monica Meadows writes, worried that since it doesn't really take effect till after the midterms, that if the House gets flipped, the GOP will start blaming the Dems for the bill. This is kind of a good segue to what we were going to do here is look inside this turd burger and really pick out the pieces of turd. That's a disgusting metaphor that I'm going to drop now. And so I asked you beforehand, could you, give me what you're seeing? Give me what the experts, the insiders who work on this stuff all day, what jumps out to you? And you tipped me off that you've got like a few categories. And the first one here seems to be right in line with Monica's point. So why don't you give me what's the first thing that stands out that is like a really disgusting feature of this bill that jumps out to you?
Yeah. And these things are in there for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's to get one vote. Sometimes it's because the process was fast and sloppy. Sometimes it's because they had to cut corners to make the math work. I think a lot of the first category falls into that last designation, which is, I think you can call them working class mirages. That the president is making a really big assertion that he's delivered on a lot of campaign promises, that there are new tax provisions in here, specifically, tax breaks for seniors on Social Security, the famous no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. But when you look at a couple of these provisions, they're not all they're cracked up to be. In the case of the tax breaks for Social Security and tips, I think one thing is, I mentioned before, and I alluded to this, that a lot of the business pieces are permanent. They are now the forever tax code until Congress passes another law. The breaks for tax on tips and overtime and Social Security only go to 2028. So you get 2 years of that. And, and then you have to hope that maybe Congress comes back. Not only that, with tips, there's so much discretion left to the IRS about what type of workers qualify for, tip income. You might be working as a waitress and get tips, and then somebody else might be working another service job at the next business over and not qualify. So maybe
it's the kind of thing that sounds like he kept a campaign promise, but is actually, well, you used a good word for it. It's kind of a mirage. It may or may not actually happen to the people.
Or I'll give you another one that, the no tax on car loan interest sounds good. But for someone to benefit from it, to get the full $10,000 deduction, you need a car loan of $112,000, which is a very big car loan. That's only 1% of car loans in the country are that big. Otherwise, you're looking at, an average person maybe getting $500 in the first year of this. And it's only for new cars. If you bought a car 2 years ago, you are completely out of luck. You get no benefit. So unless you bought a car, this year, essentially, if you bought it last year, anytime before this year, and you have a car loan on that 5-year plan, you are going to be paying full freight on that there's nothing in this bill for you on car loan interest. So between different income brackets, between deductions versus credits, I could go down the rabbit hole, but don't assume because the president is talking about you that you will actually get the benefit that you're promised out of this bill.
What do you make of Monica's point that the timing of this is really awkward intentionally? Like that's another part of the screw job underway here, that some of the hits don't take effect until after the midterms. Some of the benefits seemingly start to take effect now, certainly as talking points, they take effect now. And so Democrats are kind of left in a position where, the myth of Cassandra, right? Like, they have to foretell doom, and they have, legitimacy to this. Like, this is real. They have to foretell doom, but people may not be feeling it before voting in a year plus. And that doesn't sound great. And then the things start to actually hit when the Democrats are maybe in charge. Like how bad a factor is that in your mind?
It's a real thing to be aware of, but I would say a couple of things in response. One, even if chambers flip, the presidency is still going to be in Trump's hands for, the next 3 years, and beyond that window. But I would also say that, when you're talking about the 2 years delay, you're talking about direct benefit cuts, but businesses have to plan. You're already seeing hospital systems say that they're going to have to look at making cuts to their services. You have hospitals that are immediately threatening to shut down because the money's not going to be coming in. They have to engage in planning cycles. You're going to see, as a result of the trimming of the energy credits, that new generation is not coming online when we need it desperately. So that's going to translate into people's utility bills. So even though, strictly speaking, in the black letter provisions of the law, things don't kick in for 2 years, businesses are having to adapt and plan for these things now. And that's going to have some real world impact before those 2 years. Now, look, the economy is a big soup. We'll have to see, we're getting, Liberation Day is getting pushed out again. So like, there are a lot of things that go into the economy, and that is ultimately the biggest thing that's going to determine the political outlook. So, the American public is not going to be 100% shielded from the impact of this bill for 2 years.
I want to pick up on one piece here. This wasn't part of your list. This was part of my list. I don't know if this goes in the category of hidden, stuff that was like in this bill or kind of the top line. I think it's a hybrid of both. One of the aspects of this that I find particularly obnoxious, because it's kind of that combination, and I actually have a graphic to show with this, is the juxtaposition of the clean energy hit with the special tax breaks to benefit coal and Alaskan whaling captains. So, I mean, on the latter part of this, I don't know. Do you want to explain the coal piece of this? Because that's a particularly obnoxious special interest one in here, and you'd probably
I think this one kind of falls more into the category of you want to get the West Virginians on board. West Virginia is a big Medicaid state, and to get them to swallow some Medicaid cuts, you probably have to throw some other things into the mix. So this is, if you'll allow me quickly, metallurgical coal is a very specific type of coal.
Right.
And it was earlier by this White House designated as a critical mineral, just the way that for other things that we use to make batteries and other products. So under this bill, it will now get a 2.5% tax credit, whatever the cost of the material is. Now, the thing is, this is not coal that that gets used in power plants or facilities in the U.S. A lot of times, this is coal that gets sent to China so that China can make cheap, dirty steel and then sell it out to the rest of the world.
But about 80% of it is exported.
Yeah. So at the same time that we are trying to, mount an economic competition against China, and we're talking about how we need to win the AI race against China, we are taking energy production offline that we need to develop our AI resources, and we are actually subsidizing a cheap product that they put in Chinese steel to compete against American steel and European steel across the globe. So not coherent as a policy position, but that's what happens in these bills sometimes when you're just trying to get to 51.
I have to admit something that, of all the policy issues, when I was a legislative director on the Hill, you were a legislative director at one time on the Hill, right? Like, there are policy issues that you're really excited about, that are kind of part of your motivational base that made you want to get into this in the first place. I have to admit that climate change, I should really say global warming, because climate change is a Republican lab concoction to euphemize it. Global warming was not one of my top motivating issues. Okay. Like, it's not that I don't care about the climate and my kids' future. I do. It's just, it's not one of the things that got me out of bed in the morning. You don't have to be a climate warrior in order to appreciate this graphic that's up here on the screen. You could just be in it for the economic impact of it. You could just be in it for the economic competitiveness, per your point about China. We have, through the Inflation Reduction Act, made substantial and started to make substantial investments in energy. So leave aside the climate for just a moment. Leave that aside for just a moment. Just think in terms of people's bills. All new energy capacity investment, generation in Texas since 2023 has been renewable. Why? It is so damn cheap. It is the most economic energy capacity installation you can make. It is what the businesses want to do. This is in Texas. And if you look at this chart, most of this investment is happening among the ingrates, among the Republican districts with Republican members who voted against this stuff and railed about it and ran on it, and then have been standing there with hands out like Oliver Twist. Please, sir, can I have some more? It's so obnoxious. It's so outrageous. And at the same time that we're clawing all this back, everything you see in that big bubble that says pending is probably going to evaporate. $500 billion of technology investment that will keep paying off in people's lower electricity bills for years and years and years. Again, hold the climate aside. I don't want to fight about that with Republicans. I care about it, but I don't want to fight about that. Let's just fight about people's bills. All that investment that would lower people's bills, that's going to evaporate. And instead, we're going to pay for a tax credit to mine metallurgical coal that we're going to ship over to China. That is the definition of obnoxious. Okay, that's the end of my speech. Anything to add to that? We can move on.
Well, I just think, look, we're at a position where one of the few things there actually is bipartisan consensus on these days is that we actually need more energy. Anyone who's actually paying attention to their regional grids, their energy providers, demand is just up, and the power needs to come from somewhere. So, the notion that you need to target one sector, we truly have arrived in the old Republican mantra used to be all of the above, and we're actually kind of there for most people. But this administration is particularly, and the president is personally hostile towards renewables. And I'm not going to take credit for this. This was a Derek Thompson thing, I think, where he basically wrote this is the Republican version of woke, where you are putting cultural preferences over sound economic policy.
Right.
And it's that because I was recently at an energy event where you had utility company CEOs, end users, everybody said we need every electron we can get, and then they had a representative from the Trump administration who was like, we're just not down with renewables. I'm doing a paraphrasing, but it's a very specific and very targeted attack that doesn't make a lot of economic sense. And it's going to drive up, energy. It's going to cost jobs in these places and other places in the country. There are clean energy jobs out there. There are associated manufacturing jobs. Utility bills are going to go up for an average family $400 for no real rational reason.
The estimate I saw was on that order, right? Like hundreds of dollars a year. And, seeing that Monica has popped back into the chats with a very salient point, just like with the infrastructure bill. Take credit, vote against it, take credit for the bridges and roads. Please, sir, can I have some? Please, Mr. Buttigieg, won't you give me another bridge? To Monica's earlier point, I think this is one that is going to have the immediate impact. This is one where you see the higher energy costs that could start to hit within the next year. And like, people are talking about the in the chats, the impact of all the tariffs. I mean, the other thing going on that we're not really here to talk about, although we certainly can, is Donald Trump's delay of the extension of the Liberation Day tariffs that he walked back, for another round. Anyway, his tariff nonsense, which is continuing to build price pressure in the United States. Remember, we had a net shrinkage of GDP in the first quarter. So, you have inflationary pressure building, you have contractionary growth, you have contraction happening in the economy. That is called stagflation, my friends. It is not great politically. See the 1970s. All right, I have rabbit holed us. So we hit your first category here of working class mirages. What's your second category of disgusting stuff tucked into this bill?
Well, we actually, in bigger picture on the energy things, we sort of touched on it. It's what I would call the ideological axis to grind, and that's really things that don't strictly fit into an economic agenda. It's really about continuing either the culture war or longstanding grievances that Republicans have been working on for years. So, a couple things in here. There had previously been a $200 tax if you wanted to buy a silencer for your assault weapon or or your gun.
Can I buy one for MTG?
Right. And so now, thanks to this bill, there's no more silencer tax, which is really really just fundamentally something the NRA wanted. And again, this is an old school Republican bill under the guise of a new school Republican coalition. But these silencers have been used in mass shootings. They make police's job more difficult to track active shooters and find them. They make us less safe. But sure, cut a $200 tax break there. This bill defunds Planned Parenthood for a year. So even though Dobbs puts abortion in the hands of the state, Medicaid funds cannot be used at Planned Parenthood or other qualified facilities that provide abortion healthcare services. Now, the bill was originally written to be 10 years. Democrats got that knocked down to 1. They couldn't get it out completely, but Democrats really fought tooth and nail on a lot of these provisions. But Republicans have been trying to defund Planned Parenthood for years, and they finally at least got some headway on that. They managed to establish a national private school voucher system. They did that through the tax code. So if you want to give a scholarship donation, you can take a 100% tax credit for that, up to $1,700. Now, the thing about that is, and this is another example of ways that this bill really helps those who have already made it. By and large, this credit at the income levels is only going to help people who are already sending their kids to private school. It's not really going to expand access. It is more of a subsidy for those who are already going. But the going back to your insult and injury, the injury is really that as you pull resources away from public schools, and this thing could end up, it's scored at $4 billion. Some estimates have it going as high as $50 billion a year. That's way more than we spend on IDEA. That's way more than we spend on low-income education programs. And as you siphon resources away from schools, the public schools have an even greater burden to deal with. So once again, moving benefits up the income scale on that one.
That's a really interesting point that you're raising. That one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this, I wasn't just whistling Dixie about the stealth of all this. It seems like over the years, Republicans have wisened up about if you want to crush Medicaid, you don't come in with a bill that says we're cutting Medicaid. What you do is you come in with a bill that lards on all kinds of requirements that have the same effect. If you want to shunt people into private schools through a voucher system and crush the public school system, you could take Linda McMahon approach and say, we're going to kill the Department of Education. We're going to end public education in America. You could do that. Voters don't like that. Or you could do the stealth version. And I think that's something that comes up as a theme over and over again in this bill is the stealth approach. Let me give you, I'll give people one example here. Let me throw this is again from the New York Times here. I'm just going to hide the comment. Sorry, BD. Just going to hide the comment. But, what really stood out to me about this is I know these like box graphs aren't the easiest on the eye, but we keep seeing the top line number. This is the number of Americans, 10 million, 11 million, 12, whatever it is, who are going to lose Medicaid, right? But it's the composition of how you get there. About a third of it is through work requirements, which, we've seen in the Georgia experience. You put them on. What mostly happens is you drown people in paperwork, and people who are otherwise eligible just get shunted off the system. You make it more difficult for states to fund Medicaid. That's, part of that treadmill. We don't need to deep dive into that one. Repeal rules simplifying eligibility and renewal. Check eligibility more frequently. Again, it's a paperwork burden. It comes back over and over again to subtle ways, filling the system with sludge, the opposite of positive behavioral economic style nudges to get people to beneficial activities, to beneficial behavior, to smooth their path to the thing, the outcome, the benefit that you want them to get. Instead, you put sludge in their way. You make everything a pain in the ass, and it works. It works. And it's death by 1,000 cuts and 1,000 pen strokes. And that's what's happening. And again, what strikes me as obnoxious about it is this shit kind of works. It gives Republicans a leg to stand on, even though, I'll pop this back up. Even though only about a third of the cuts to Medicaid are coming via work requirements, that's going to be their talking point about it. Like, hey, shouldn't people who are able to work? That sounds kind of reasonable to a lot of people. And so they're using this as like just a piece of this that's really part of this bigger picture of introducing sludge into the system. That's going to be their talking point. That's going to be how they're going to try and get away with it. And it just comes up again and again. It's like your voucher point here. This is, the first step of a multi-step process. It's like I have a new piece up in Newsweek this morning that'll probably go out on Blue Amp on Thursday, in which I point out it's the exact same step-by-step frog in a pot of water that's slowly being brought to a boil process that RFK Jr. has used to completely upend public health on vaccines in the course of just 6 months. He lies to Republican senators, says, I'm not going to touch vaccine policy. I'm not going to touch the board that oversees recommendations on vaccine policy. And then after gullible senators say, sounds great. No one who speaks German that well could be bad. He goes ahead, cans everyone on that board, replaces them with vaccine conspiracists, within 2 weeks, convenes the board, kills the use of flu shots that use thimerosal because it's a long-running conspiracy theory in the anti-vax community that there's a link to autism. It's not true. Multiple papers, scientific studies have shown that that's not true. They're basically saying we give no shits about science whatsoever. And then the next thing that he says in a hearing just last week is, actually, I want to take a look at all children's vaccines. And that's how we land here. Anyway, okay, long diatribe, but my point is there is so much stealth in all of this, and it's part of the obnoxiousness. You were talking about private school vouchers. What about the loan caps? What about the student loan repayments and the loan caps?
Yeah, well, if you're gonna, it's another great way to make us less healthy and less competitive. So this bill, it changes this. First of all, it changes student loan forgiveness. So if you have student loans, and by the way, this is not the it's repayment, it's not forgiveness. I'm sorry, this has nothing to do with the Biden loan forgiveness program. It's a longstanding student loan repayment program. They make the terms more onerous for students. So if you have a student loan right now, it's going to be harder for you to repay that. And it also caps the amount of money you can take out for grad school. So for grad school, generally, the cap is $100,000. For medical school and law school, that's $200,000. And I know that sounds like a lot, but the median amount of debt for medical school graduates is $205,000, and the median 4-year cost of medical school attendance for the class of 25 was almost $290,000 for public schools and almost $400,000 for private schools. So,
hey, quick pop quiz for you, Ryan. What has two thumbs, speaks French, and really commiserates with having a spouse with that amount of medical school debt? Wow, this guy right here.
Right. So this is right. So
we're still paying this off for my wife.
This is right where you live, but you have a lot of doctors saying. I mean, essentially, you have people saying, this is not even going to cover a year or two, ultimately, of my attendance. This is going to keep anybody who's not already wealthy from going into medicine, law, engineering, all the things that actually make our economy go and give us the edge that has put us at the top of the world. You are artificially restricting the talent pool. So we're going to be less innovative, less healthy. I mean, I guess if you're treating fewer patients because you're not paying for Medicaid, you don't need as many doctors. But I don't love that for our country. So and again, it's really just again this focus on higher education and this tightening of who can get access to education, who can get access to opportunity. And it's a really backward-looking policy that's going to have a real impact on people's lives, if not today or tomorrow down the road when it's harder to get a doctor. We don't have that next great engineering breakthrough, and people can't get the help they need.
We have an acute generalist doctor shortage in the U.S. and providers, mid-level providers. Well, that sounds it sounds like a subtle put down. I don't mean it to be, but that's just the term of art. But providers of all kinds, we have a shortage. And I'd like to just say to Dom's Republic, I hope Ryan was able to address your question. If you have a follow-up on that, in terms of the infrastructure of the higher ed system, definitely please pop it in the chat. I mean, it sounds like, Ryan, what you're saying in response to Dom or Dom's Republic here is you're just going to see this downward slide of availability and affordability that's going to make itself felt in the supply of people in the higher ed professions.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think if you look more broadly, higher ed is facing a lot of challenges right now. This is going to be one more of them, with cuts to scientific research funding that plays a big role in university budgets. Honestly, and there also probably needs to be some legitimate reassessment of how universities work and how people see the value proposition. But it's an uphill fight right now for colleges to keep providing higher education services in the way they have in the past. It's going to be a challenging environment, and our university system, just again, culturally, people may feel differently about them, but the benefits that they have produced economically for the country and the leadership role that they have supported globally are pretty undeniable. And have touched everyone's lives in some way or another. And so we should be a little bit worried about the drag on those institutions.
What I don't understand, I mean, and I mean this literally, like I really actually don't understand this, is I get that there is a push. There's a belief in Trump world that they need to fight the universities. They need to fight. They think the woke left owns the universities and the colleges, both the faculty and the students, right? That's why the war on Harvard. That's why the war on Columbia. I can at least intellectually understand that, even though it's silly. I mean, there's something to the fact that, most people in academia lean politically left. So you could sort of at least rationalize like, oh, Trump is a paranoid idiot who thinks that the world is divided into people who he dominates and people who are his enemies. And therefore, the universities are his enemies. I'm going to go after them. I can sort of wrap my head around this, but that would mostly apply to the undergraduate level. What I really, really cannot understand is why go after the grad school loans. And I'm not trying to be self-serving about like my wife's student loans here or anything. We do fine. We do absolutely fine. Mm-hmm. It's more like, these are people who are going into professions that we need economically. And there's really not a political component to this. This is really cut off your nose to spite your face economics. It's the same thing, honestly, as the clean tech cuts, as the clean energy infrastructure cuts. It's like we have this broad political position that just makes no freaking sense, and that's disproportionately, here, I'll put this back up, it's disproportionately benefiting Republicans. It just it's kind of baffling, and I almost, as an intellectual exercise, would like to be a fly on the wall in the Oval Office to see someone explain to Trump like he's a 2-year-old why this makes any kind of political sense. You talk to Republican colleagues all the time, like, former Senate staff like you. Like, do they get why this kind of thing, the grad school loan cap, makes political sense?
Well, so my capacity is limited to put myself in the mindset. I was not involved in the writing of this bill in any way, in case that was not clear.
We will not blame you, my friend.
I am not part. I'm not on the Hill these days. But I think there is the cultural element. That's the mood music. But I also think one thing to keep in mind is that there was incredible pressure because of the rules of reconciliation. And you've had other people on. I've talked about this before. You've had others talk before. You do have to stay within certain number parameters, and the size of the tax rates. And they're sort of extensions of tax rates. They're not even tax cuts anymore, which may also undercut some of the economic benefit of this stuff. But that's a separate discussion. They needed to find a way to make the math work. So I haven't heard Republicans discussing this provision as something that they were necessarily like prioritizing coming in. But if you look at, okay, we're squeezing universities, and if you put this cap on, that's going to reduce the outlays for student loan programs. And we need to make it sounds crazy in a multi-trillion-dollar bill that at some point you get to digging in the seat cushions, but you kind of do.
Yeah. And you've done this exercise before, so I do take your word for it. All right. I don't want to skimp on the rest of your list. You had one more category you wanted to hit us with of like obnoxious stuff stuffed into this stuffed crust turd pizza.
Yeah. Well, let me give you. So we talked about the coal piece. There's a combination. I'll just sort of I'll on the fly lump these into sort of. Things that were either done because they were sloppy, because they were necessary, or because they're absent in the bill. So the sloppy / necessary is for a bill that is very focused on we're trying to make things more efficient. We're doing work requirements. This bill actually creates an incentive for states to get worse at eliminating erroneous SNAP payments.
So SNAP is food aid.
Sorry, yes, the food aid pro. So for the first 2 years of the bill, what essentially food aid has been 100% paid for by the federal government. This bill says, no, we're not going to cut it. We're just going to ask the states to pay more. Not that states have a ton of money, so it's more pressure on states. But for states that have really high error rates, the number is 13.3%. If your state has more than Alaska, yeah, there's a basket of about 10. But yeah, if you are a state, it was done specifically for Alaska to push off the cost sharing for 2 years. So if you make a lot of errors, we're not gonna penalize you. If you make a medium amount of errors, maybe you should work less on enforcement.
So just so I get this straight, if you're fucking up your food program, we're gonna not only thumbs up you, we're gonna incentivize that. Like, that's okay.
Well, if you're just rational behavior, if you are a state that has a 10% error rate and suddenly you're going to have to pick up more of the tab on SNAP, or you could stop chasing down bad checks and not have to pay more.
Wow. That's a good one.
So that's not exactly really in keeping with the we're gonna tighten up on waste, fraud, and abuse. There's two more. I'll touch on them really quickly, but I do think they're important, and they're both in the healthcare space. One is, you mentioned 10 million people losing insurance. You've been talking about the Medicaid. There's another part of this that is going back to the ACA. Again, and this is something that working people use to get health care. They're called the enhanced premium tax credits. It's basically a bonus tax credit that if you buy healthcare on the exchanges, if you have a job, you work and you buy your own insurance on the healthcare exchanges, it helps you pay for that. Those expire. They need to be renewed at the end of the year. This bill did not do it. This is a middle class tax credit, and if these credits don't get extended by the end of the year, premiums are going to go up 93% on 5 million. 93%. 5 million people are going to lose their health coverage entirely. So that gets that number up to like 14 million from your 10 million. The average family of 4 is going to see a health premium increase of $7,700 a year.
Wow.
So that is real money, real affordability pain, all because of not wanting to simply extend something that working people use to pay for health insurance.
You know what we did, Ryan? We buried the fucking lead. That's what we did here. That's the sneakiest, most obnoxious one. And we're Democrats. We put it at the like 51 minutes into this thing. Wow, that is a bad one. That is a really bad one.
Yeah, because it's not just about the Medicaid cuts. It's about the need to empower people to buy their own insurance and just make it for a president that ran on cost of living, cost of eggs, cost of health insurance is a pretty big one. And the clock is ticking on that one. So maybe, hopefully, still hope to get that done this year, but the fact they didn't do it in this bill is a pretty big blow. And then I'll just do one other one really quick, just because it's not in the healthcare space. Hospitals are starting to sound the alarm. The Medicaid dollars that are not coming in are going to force them to make choices in different places. This was just in Politico this week. There is an increasing concern that they're not going to be able to pay for cybersecurity upgrades, and health systems have already been the targets of multiple cyber attacks. And whether it's private hackers who want health information, maybe it's state actors who want to mess with our system, they are worried that one of the things they're going to have to put on the table is cybersecurity upgrades, which is not the thing that you tend to think of in a hospital, but could have real consequences. I would not want the computer system to go down if I was heading into the ER.
This has been a problem. This has been a ransomware issue at hospitals in the last few years, right? So this is no joke. Boy, I mean, they say the devil's in the details, and I think that like policy wonks like you disagree. The angel's in the details. The details are where so many important things happen. I'm still, honestly, like the cybersecurity for hospitals that's a good one. I'm still mentally processing. I didn't realize that one about you've got people who are working. You're working people. Okay. You just finished, Republicans, doing your whole like Medicaid work requirements. We need able-bodied people working. And it's like, okay, great. I'm with you. So you've got working people who you're going to give a bonus tax credit to incentivize them to get their own health insurance, private health insurance. And you don't extend that, and it's going to cost middle-class families of 4, $7,000 a year more. Yep. That is just an absolute kick in the pants. Gosh, that is a really, really big one. Okay. All right, let me hit you with a few. These are odds and ends. We'll just do this rapid fire. This is like a lightning round here of ones that popped up for me as I was kind of searching. You were much better at this these days. I no longer have the ability. It's like a power you develop on the Hill to like go quickly and like read CRS reports and like figure out what's in these bills. I've lost it. It's atrophied. But
and I know you're at war with ChatGPT. You're not even letting yourself use those.
You know what? ChatGPT did not fucking get it. I wrote a long, yes, right. Cause you read my Substack. Thank you. I'll pop it up here again. Cause I really want to incentivize people to subscribe to my Substack. Thank you for putting the podcast up there. All the podcasts are going on to the Substack these days anyway. So if you're going to subscribe to one thing, worthknowing.substack.com. I just wrote a piece last week about, I have a little bit of a war going with AI. I don't use it. I won't use it for anything that is going to come out of my mouth or out of my fingertips for my writing. I don't want it to invade my thoughts. I don't want it to have kind of like this atlas. I don't know, this is a whole screed, but read the piece, subscribe and read the piece. But I will use it as an able research assistant. A Chat GPT could not distinguish between House passed and Senate passed versions. It kept screwing it up.
Well, to be fair to ChatGPT, this thing happened so fast that many House members by last weekend probably couldn't either. This was, I mean, Republicans maligned Democrats for the Pelosi. We have to pass the bill so we can know
find out what's in it,
and that is how the tables have turned.
Yes. I mean, that's so. But these are ones that stood out to me from my quick dive. We've got. You can just any quick reaction to these. A supersized deduction for business meals only for employees at certain Alaskan fishing boats and processing plants. And the way they achieve that is you get the tax credit, a deduction for business meals, if you are located in the United States north of 50 degrees north latitude and not in a metropolitan statistical area. Why don't you just say it's for Bob? Wow. Okay, Lisa Murkowski, I see you. Yeah, Mazel Tov. That's for you. Then there's a $17 billion expansion of a provision that enables venture capitalists to make a fortune tax-free. That's a good one. James Lankford of Oklahoma won a carve-out for the oil and gas industry from a minimum tax on big corporations created during the Biden administration. There's some more billions for you. We've got a $2 billion tax break important to the rum industry for Senator Bill Cassidy. I guess Louisiana makes a lot of rum. Let's see what else we've got. We've hit the Alaskan whaling captains. A $7 billion tax cut for farmers that allows them to postpone paying for some of their capital gains when they sell off their farmland. Maybe, this one may be the winner. I'm going to put this out to everyone. Please tell me in the chat if you've been kind of following along all of these. Do you have a winner for most obnoxious? This is like the reverse of the Oscars. I think this one, the gun silencers, was a strong entry just for sheer ludicrousness. The failure to pass that tax incentive for people on health insurance, that one is probably the most important one in my mind. But I don't know. This one's in the running for most obnoxious. A $1 billion provision allowing spaceports, which the legislation defines as any facility located at or in close proximity to a launch site or re-entry site, to sell tax-exempt bonds like airports. Senator Ron Wyden, the top Democratic tax writer, said in a post on Twitter that this is Trump's wedding gift to Jeff Bezos and birthday gift to Elon Musk. So there you go. Happy to get people's entries for what is the most obnoxious thing in here. Ryan, what stands out to you? What is the most obnoxious thing in here?
Oh, it's such a hard thing to pick. You're also, there's the Garden of Heroes in there, 40 million for that, which is some sort of monument thing. You know what? I will do the opposite of what I normally like to do. I'm actually going to be a Beltway person. There is a provision that Cruz and Cornyn got in here to take the Discovery space shuttle from DC and move it to Texas. So the Smithsonian's going to lose the space shuttle.
No. Yeah. Gosh darn it. That is really, wow. Hey, here's a good one. This is not wonky, but can I interest you in a $100 million slush fund for White House Office of Management and Budget Director Russell Vaught, who co-wrote Project 2025, a $100 million slush fund for him personally to find budget and accounting efficiencies. In other words, $100 million for Russell Vaught to have his own Doge. How's that? That feels like
I was reading Jim's comment here.
Wow. These are, look, here's the fun part about this, because I know we're reaching the top of the hour, and believe it or not, folks, Ryan is actually in high demand. People pay top dollar for his services to help understand how to advocate for issues And so we're going to have to let Ryan go in a minute. But I think what's really remarkable about all this is we may not have found everything yet. There may still be unknown unknowns in here, to sound Rumsfeldian about it. Like, I mean, I'm sure we've got most of it, but you never know. And because there are also always unintended consequences. And, it's like you pass ARA, you never could have anticipated that Solyndra would become the political albatross for that bill, right? Like, you never could have anticipated that what would have really given the ACA a hard time was the damn website rollout. So, like, there may be consequences coming for all of this that we just can't even anticipate.
Oh, that's well said. And I think that, again, these policies this bill also is not going to operate in a vacuum. The 100 million for VOT, builds on the Doge cuts that already happened, the, economic drag from the debt, if we're in a trade war for 2 years. I mean, this is a very big puzzle piece, but it's a very big puzzle.
It is. And it's, this all comes on top of, I just have to throw out one like little piece. This is my own personal, it's an issue. I was talking before about issues that get you out of bed in the morning that you really care about when you go into a policy role, when you go into a legislative role. Like, you go to work in these places because you care about policy, you care about your country. Yes, Democrats are fucking patriotic as hell. Let me just tell you. And, for me, there were certain issues that, really, really got me going. One of them is investment in science, basic R&D. It's the best thing that the federal government does. I've treated people to my screed on this. I will not do it again here. Maybe I'll do it again someday. But the numbers on this are staggering. I've written it up in Newsweek. I've written it up on Raw Story and Alternet before. The case is so compelling that this is the most effective thing that the federal government does, is invest in basic science. It has such an incredible payoff for all of us. And what we've done there, and this bill kind of continuing down that road of killing everything for like the stupidest of political reasons that has anything to do with academia. That's the one that sticks in my craw. But I know it's not, Jim had a straight up winner here. And I although he didn't specify which one it was.
I thought there could be a lag. I thought he was talking about the VOT Super Doge fund.
Oh, maybe it's Super Doge. Yeah, maybe that's it. All right. Well, you know what? We'll declare that the winner of our little game. Let me do. I got to get you out of here. Oh, wait, hold on. No. Jim clarified. Yes. It's Russell Vought and the Jeff Bezos wedding gift of a tax break for your launch facilities. So,
I don't think Russ got invited to the wedding.
Well, you know what? Now he's got $100 million.
Yeah.
He can have his own Italian wedding. So, all right. I want to do a couple of very, very quick things. First of all, thanks to everyone who has been active in the chats. Your participation is what makes this super fun. And it's one of the reasons that I've stopped doing so many traditional podcasts and I do so many more live streams, because it's talking to everyone that really makes this delightful to do. So thank you for all of that. If you like doing these kinds of things, and if you're used to going to Cliff's regular Wednesday, 2 p.m. Live stream, speaking of Italian weddings, Cliff is in an undisclosed location. It is summer. He is taking a break with his family. He is apparently having a delightful time. He's slurring his text to me. I'm making up at least one of those facts. And so he is not here. I am guest hosting tomorrow with another excellent guest. We've got the prolific broadcaster, former reformed Republican and anti-MAGA warrior, Fred Wellman, who's really an outstanding listen. A little less wonky, but every bit as fun as Ryan. And so that is coming up tomorrow, 2 p.m. Eastern. So I hope if you're used to attending those with Cliff, you will show up with me playing the role of Cliff tomorrow. Next Tuesday, I'm on vacation with my family. But you know what? I've decided to do the Tuesday live stream anyway. So I'm going to attempt to do my Tuesday live stream right here, same bat time, same bat channel, from the beach. We're going to see how this goes. This might be an all-time disaster. I hope you'll show up at least to see if it's a disaster, if for no other reason. And finally, a big thank you to Ryan McConney, truly one of the expert of experts who really knows what's going on inside Washington and with all these bills. Really, I can't thank you enough for all your expertise.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you to everybody for chatting. It was great. We did it live.
We did it live.
We did it live.
Yeah, I you know what? It's like the allegory of the cave. I can't go back. It's like there's a special charge to doing these live shows that I just can't get from the pre-records. I still do some, but this is a ton of fun. All right.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, with that, all right, we're going to let Ryan go. We're going to let all of you go. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope I will see you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Here, and I hope I will see you next Tuesday. Be well, stay safe.